Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. I am Ishamina and this is my group. Today we'll be presenting about teen sexting, the critical info for parents, educators, and the general public. Okay, this is the index showing the subtopic that we will be presenting. As for my part, I will be talking about the introduction and the significance of teen sexting. Before we get into deep into this topic, let's find out about the definition of sexting. Sexting can be defined as the act of sending sexually explicit messages, images, videos through digital devices, typically a mobile phone. This can include nude, semi nude, or suggestive photos, videos, or sexual text that can be sent via texting, apps, social media, and other messaging platforms. So why does this happen among the teenagers? Firstly, it may be because of the online environment and anonymity. Teenagers, they believe in perception of anonymity. They believe that everything they send online, whether it's videos, photos, or message, are private and they can delete it anytime and anywhere. Secondly, desire for intimacy and relationship building. Some teenagers view texting as a way to foster relationship with their loved ones or romantic partners, especially when the physical proximity is limited. Thirdly, influence of pornography. Exposure to pornography, especially during the early age, can actually lead to teenagers having sexual expectation. They use sexting as a way to explore their sexuality. It can also impact the behaviors and belief about sexuality, making the sexting increase in number. Lastly, peer pressure and social norm. Some teenagers use sexting as a way to gain acceptance, the desire to fit in and be perceived as cool pressure the teenagers into sexting, especially when they consider sexting as a norm or common during with their friends. So why do parents, educators, and public should know about sexting? Firstly, because of the legal consequence awareness. Adult and teenagers often underestimate the ramification of sexting. Minor sending or distribute image or videos explicitly can actually lead to serious charges, including being registered as sexual offenders. Secondly, preventing emotional and social harm. Explicit photos, images, or videos can be spread rapidly online. This kind of thing can lead to bullying, whether it's physical or cyberbullying, and eventually cause humiliation. This kind of exposure can lead to mental illness as it can damage the teenager's self esteem. Thirdly, protecting teen from exploitation and manipulation. Sexting can be used as a tool for manipulation, especially in unhealthy relationship where teenagers might be forced to take a photo of them explicitly and that photos can be used against them for control or blackmail. This will eventually lead to other mental illness as it can affect the teenager's image and also mental. Lastly, enable education and prevention. Educators and parents, they have equipped with knowledge that can help teenagers foster an open communication. They can help teenagers making safer choice by teaching them about the digital responsibilities. Study shows that approximately 20% of teenagers have sent sex texts at least once in their life, making it a common but not a universal behavior. So, in a research that conducted by Patchin and Hinduja, the numbers of teen sexting increased significantly from 2016 to 2019, meaning that more teenagers have received and asked for a sex text. So why does this happen and how do we actually prevent this from happen? So what is the significance of sexting? Firstly, it's important as it can link to emotional and mental health risks. Firstly, sexting is associated with increased emotional well-being, meaning that it can include the feelings of depression, anxiety, and victimization. Also, non conventional sexting is linked to negative mental health outcome. Secondly, the risk of harmful behaviors and victimization. Sexting can increase the numbers of harmful behaviors. For example, cyberbullying, sextortion, and sexual harassment. This kind of thing can contribute to emotional trauma and other mental illness. Thirdly, connection with early sexual activities and risky behaviors. Sexting always correlates with early initiation of sexual activities. For example, having multiple partners and unprotected sex. This can lead to health consequences and negative adolescent development negatively.
Hello everyone, my name is Christina and I'll be the speaker for our next segment, which is public issues and risks concerning teen sexting. Now, some of you might be wondering what is exactly means by public issues and public risks. So, I would love to give the audience an overview of what this segment is going to be all about and what does it exactly means by those terms I mentioned earlier. So, public issues refers to the societal causes or conditions that led to a specific behavior, while public risks are the harmful consequences that spread across individuals and societies stemming from that particular behavior. In the context of today's talk, teen sexting is a public issue because it reflects the changing social behaviors among our youth today, influenced by various reasons, which could be technology, media, even peer norms. It becomes a public risk when those behaviors result in emotional harm, cyberbullying, exploitation, affecting not only the victims but also their family, the reputation of the school they attend to, and society at large. As my colleague mentioned earlier, sexting happen among teens because of their desire for intimacy and relationship building. But what if it is exactly because of that kind of desire, everything in their life fall apart when that person they're trying to build a relationship with expose their secret or even try to blackmail them? That kind of scenario brings us to our first public risk, which is the psychological and emotional risk that coming out of this. Now, teenagers may experience shame, anxiety, guilt, or even depression if the images of them are leaked and used against them. For example, let's say a teen couple didn't end things well, and one of them decided to get revenge by spreading explicit photos of them to shame them and to humiliate them publicly, which is also can be labeled as revenge porn. This kind of non-consensual sharing can lead to emotional distress and loss of trust of the victim, and the victim might be struggling to trust anyone, in the meantime, even their close family. After all, those pictures were sent to their significant others in the act of trust and anonymity. According to Key 2014, victims often suffer from low self-esteem and long-term psychological trauma. And in extreme cases, public humiliation can trigger suicidal ideation. And this kind of emotional damage isn't something the victims can move past from easily. It may take them years to even overcome this situation due to the online permanence. Our second public risk stems from social and family impacts. The damaged reputations and the bullying of the victims are the common consequences when this type of exposure happens. As, for example, at school, they might get slut shamed and told they are not going to amount to anything in their life just because of this one simple mistake. Teenagers may also face peer rejection, become a hot gossip topic, and exclusion at school. This is because in the school environment, the victim might be perceived as filthy and dirty, and it might be even embarrassing to be associated with the victim. Not only that, families also often express their mistrust, conflict, and disappointment towards the victims after exposure. This is mainly because they could never imagine that their child are capable to do any kind of this stuff. Familial, res- familial relationships may also suffer due to shame and fear of judgment coming from everyone, especially from extremely conservative relatives. Last but not least, the non-consensual sharing of teen sexting can lead to privacy and digital risk. As we all know it, once a content is shared online, it is nearly impossible to be deleted permanently due to images can be copied, screenshotted, or even uploaded without their consent. This kind of online permanence, which is also known as digital footprint, will continue to haunt the victims for the rest of their life. It is undeniable that the evolution of social media contributed to the rise of sextortion. Sextortion is a situation where perpetrators blackmail their victims using private images to get some revenge and even money. Also due to social media evolution and its netizens, leaked sex may spread across multiple platforms, causing widespread harm and humiliation of the victim. Their trauma is to be mocked and repeated as a joke to others. And the worst of it all is that digital footprints are permanent and can resurface years later, which can be difficult for the victims to land a proper job or even find a fam- find a person to start a new family with.
Hello, I'm Alia, and I'll be the one who presenting about legal action against teen sexting, all focusing on three countries, which is Malaysia, England, and the United States. This topic is important because sexting among young people is becoming more common worldwide, and each country handles it differently depending on how their laws define child protection and consent. Let's start with Malaysia. In Malaysia, sexting among teenagers is treated as a serious criminal offense under several laws, mainly the Communications and Multimedia Act 1998, the Penal Code, and the Sexual Offense Against Children Act 2017. Under Section 211 of the Communications and Multimedia Act, posting or publishing indecent, obscene, false, menacing, or grossly offensive content online is an offense. The punishment can be up to 10 years imprisonment or a fine up to 1 million ringgit or both, with extra daily fines if the offense continues. Next, the Penal Code has Section 292, which punish anyone involved in selling, possessing, or distributing obscene material with up to 3 years imprisonment or a fine or both. And for Section 293, which made it even more serious if the materials are distributed to anyone under 20 years old with up to 5 years imprisonment or a fine. And the last one, under the Sexual Offense Against Children Act 2017, Section 5 covers making or producing child sexual abuse material with a maximum of 30 years imprisonment and at least 6 strokes of whipping. So overall, Malaysia's approach is very strict, which is even if teenagers share sexual image voluntarily, it is still treated as a child sexual abuse material. Next, we look at England. Here, sexting among teenagers falls under the Protection of Children Act 1978 and the Sexual Offence Act 2018. 3. According to these laws, it is illegal to create, possess, or share indecent images of anyone under 18. That means even consensual sexting between teenagers is technically against the law. However, the application of the law in the UK is much more flexible. The police usually focus on education and awareness rather than punishment, especially if the sexting is consensual and does not involve exploitation. School and local authorities often handle such cases through counseling or educational programs to guide the student, not criminalize them. While the maximum punishment can reach 10 years imprisonment, most cases end with warnings or guidance and not from a judge. So the UK takes a more balanced and educational approach, focusing on protecting teenagers while helping them understand the consequences of their actions. And now let's move on to the United States. The law here are more diverse because each state has its own legislation. In addition to federal child pornography laws, in general, sexting involving minors is treated as child pornography, which means the punishment can be very severe, including imprisonment or being registered as a sex offender. However, many states realized that this was too harsh for consensual cases between teenagers, so several states have created special teen sexting law which give lighter penalties like counseling, community service, or participation in educational or diversion programs. This means the level of punishment really depends on which state the offense happened in. Some states still use strict child pornography laws, while others take a more rehabilitative approach. Overall, the US has a mixed system. Some states are strict like Malaysia, while others are more understanding like the UK. To conclude, teen sexting has become a global concern. It's recognized worldwide as a serious issue that involves privacy, consent, and child protection. Even though Malaysia, the UK, and the US have different laws and approach, they all share a common goal, which is to prevent exploitation, protect minors' digital safety, and promote responsible online behavior. The key takeaway here is that even if sexting between minors seems consensual, it can still lead to serious legal consequences. That's why awareness and education are very important, which is to help young people avoid both legal and emotional harm.
I'm Adriana and now I'll share a real case from Minnesota, United States. A 14 years old girl was charged with child pornography for sharing her own nude photo through her phone. Even though she sent the picture herself and it was meant to be private, the law treated it as the same as distributing child porn. This case gained attention because it shows how strict laws can unfairly criminalize teenagers who engage in consensual sexting. It raised an important question: should teens be punished or educated instead when it comes to sexting behavior? So, from the Minnesota case, we can see how even one private photo shared between teenagers can turn into a serious legal issue. It also shows that many teens don't actually understand what counts as sexting and how it can happen in different ways. To make it clear, I'll share a few common situations that are considered teen sexting. The first example is when two teenagers in a relationship send private photos to each other. Usually, they do it as a form of trust or affection, not realizing the risks involved. The problem happens when the relationship ends. Sometimes those images get shared without consent, which leads to embarrassment or bullying. Studies like Hasinoff 2017 and Druin 2013 found that many teens see it as normal, but it can still cause serious emotional and legal consequences. The second example is when a teen takes intimate or nude photos of themselves but doesn't send them to anyone. Even though they keep it private, there's always a risk if the phone gets lost, hacked, or someone accesses it without permission. Wallach and Finkelhor 2012 mentioned that in some cases, teens have even been investigated by police for just owning those images of themselves, which show how complicated the law can be for minors. The third example is sending nudes through social media or dating apps. Teens might use platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, or even Tinder, thinking the image will disappear or stay private, but they rarely do. In Malaysia, UNICEF 2019 and Channel New Asia 2023 both reported cases of teenagers who were tricked into sharing their photos online and then was blackmailed, which is known as sextortion. This shows how online sexting can quickly turn into exploitation. The last example is sexting in group chat. This happens when teens share or forward sexual photos or video in WhatsApp or Telegram group, sometimes for fun or peer pressure. The USIM 2021 study found that this behavior is increasing among Malaysian teens, even though many don't realize it's illegal. Pachin and Hinduja 2019 also highlight that schools should teach safe digital behavior so students understand consent and privacy better. So overall, teen sexting can happen in different ways, privately, online, or even in a group, and each one carries its own risk. That's why education and awareness are more effective than punishment to help teens make safer choices in digital world.
Okay, this is the last part for our presentations, which is about prevention. So, how to prevent sexting among teens? There are five ways that included here, which is first, promote digital awareness, encourage positive thinking, build self-esteem and self-respect, control content exposure, and lastly, aware of peer influence. So, how to prevent sexting among teens by promoting digital awareness? So, you can control screen time. You can set some times for how long you should spend on the screen and set some times to rest. Other than that, you need to be aware of who you interact with people online. Observe the person's profile picture and biodata to make sure that you are interacting with real people, not people with using the fake account or the users that pretend to be a person which actually is a bot. And lastly, you need to be disconnected from any digital activities for a while by engaging in meditating or relaxing activities such as reading books, stretching, playing musical instruments if you have one, and helping your parents doing house chores. Besides that, encouraging positive thinking is a must, especially among teens. They can spend time with positive people by spending time with people of the same interests, join groups or clubs. They can also use appropriate humor by knowing their audience, read the rooms, and avoid humor that target individuals or groups, especially humor that involve sexuality or dirty jokes. And they also need to take care of their own mental health by having enough sleep, manage stress well, and eat healthy diet. For these points, it is actually a life changing for teenagers because they need to build their own self esteem and self respect. And by doing that, they can participate in character building or leadership camps by signing up for the camps during holidays or leisure times to improve their own skills. And besides that, they need to interact with people respectfully and with manners. They need to be considerate with other peoples, set boundaries while speaking, and use polite languages. And they can involve in healthy activities such as exercising by setting goals or feed the animals while, like in the picture, know how to hold the python appropriately or carefully. So, since teenagers have been connected with all kinds of social media, so they need to control their own content exposure. By doing that, they need to customize their own content preferences, like setting the content suggestions for their own interests or for their own preferences only. And then they can report or block content that promote sexuality or nudity. They can use report and block features to restrict unwanted content by preventing them from seeing the same content again. And this picture actually is taken from the YouTube and they can use the features as well in other social media. And then they also need to distract themselves immediately while seeing the content like inappropriate content accidentally. They need to quickly swipe away or distract themselves with something else. And lastly, teenagers need to be aware of peer influence. They need to choose who their friend will be by befriend with someone of the same interests and passions, who supports them, trusted and honest. And by having those criteria, they are good enough to be your friends. So other than that, they need to reject unwanted invitation from their peers, especially if they try to bring you from somewhere that you don't know whereabouts. By asking them where they will bring you, then they need to say no confidently or try to find any excuses. And finally, try to not involve in any unhealthy interactions like gossiping, which by means they need to quickly cut off the interactions if they feel uneasy about the interactions. As a conclusion for teen sexting is actually not just a digital issue. It is a psychological, emotional, and social problems that affects personal safety, self-esteem, and future of the teens. As parents, educators, and community itself must share the responsibility to create open, non-judgmental spaces where young people can talk about online pressures and relationships honestly. All in all, educations, understandings, and communications are the most powerful tools to prevent risky behaviors like sexting among teens. This slide shows our references, and with that, we have reached the end of these presentations. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.